No Grow Go podcast. I'm Matt Jordan. I'm here with the good Dr. Amy Young and with our Kidsmen director, Miss Melissa Egan. And out of the three of us, I'm sure y'all can tell who's the most nervous, being Miss Melissa, as this is her first podcast. And we all have avenues of spiritual life that we want to grow in. And for Melissa, it's speaking in front of people. So,
Amen.
We're working on that. Yeah, that's it. So, a little bit about what we've got going on, some things that we want to do this Lent is talk about what discipleship means, what family discipleship is, how it functions in our church, where you can find more info, and all sorts of fun things about family discipleship. It's so impactful to know what it means to make disciples, but even more so how we can do it in our homes. So before we go any further, I'm going to let Amy give a brief introduction of herself and Melissa as well, under 30 seconds. Ready, set, go.
Wow. My name is Dr. Amy Young, and I am the Family Ministries Director here at First Methodist Church, and I love coffee and Star Wars War Eagle.
Nice.
Yeah, 30 seconds.
Ooh. I am Melissa Egan. I'm originally from Tennessee. I am the Kidman minister here, and I like unicorns and coffee that's flavored.
Yes, you can come in the office, and it's easy to tell when you go to the coffee maker whose is whose. Mine's the whole pot of coffee. Amy's got a nice K-cup she keeps in her office. Yeah. And Melissa's is all the hot chocolate and flavored stuff that no one else drinks.
And so it's creamer that's white.
Yeah, that's right. You look at her cups, and mine's black. And Amy's and Melissa's look a little bit different. So,
I put nothing in my coffee.
Oh, good. I knew we got along well for a reason.
We do,
yeah. Well, all right. So, first thing we want to do is we just want to hit on what is discipleship, why discipleship's important, what it is, and why this is impactful. So, discipleship for me is something that when you look in the life of the church is something that has so much value to what Christ calls us to do as believers in Jesus. He even says it in Matthew 28, go therefore and make disciples, baptizing them and teaching them all that I have commanded you. Go and make disciples. He tells his own disciples to do as he's commanded, to teach, to bring others to walk alongside him, to wash their feet. We can see the aspect of discipleship of teaching other people to be like Jesus, something that is even true all the way into the Old Testament at the Shema in Deuteronomy 6 and other parts of Old Testament literature where the people are supposed to teach younger generations about God, how to worship, how to follow the law, how to do those things. And so it's so impactful and important that we understand that discipleship is something that is valuable across the board. Amy and Melissa, tell me, what are your thoughts on discipleship? What's there for you?
Discipleship is key to being a Christ follower. There's a lot of books out there that are addressing the fact that the church largely has disjointed what it means to be saved and then discipled. They treat those things as two separate things. But a lot of recent resources have come out to say that we cannot unhinge or disjoint salvation in Christ with being a disciple of Christ, that they are one and the same. He doesn't call us to be converts. He calls us to be followers. And so discipleship process throughout one's life is combined with the salvation experience. So they're mandatory. It's mandatory to be a disciple if you're going to be a Christ follower. And so the church has got to do things for its people, provide resources and tools and avenues and methods for people being disciples of Jesus, not just believers in Jesus.
That's good. Melissa?
I tell my kids all the time in Kidman that they have the best mission field compared to any of us. On a daily basis, I see you, Amy, Mr. Billy, people that are believers. My kids see hundreds of people a day, and many of them are not believers. So I explain it that you get to go out to school and you can disciple to all these people. And that is amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. And discipleship is something that Amy said it well, and I think Melissa's on point too, that when you think about discipleship, the church has really become disjointed between discipleship and salvation.
Yes.
And we pursue salvation, but we lack discipleship. When I worked as an intern with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, we always tried to do chants to get the kids involved, and some of the kids would just love it, and if you saw Amy doing the monkey at VBS this past year, or
So much fun.
all of our kids doing church clap, that's the vibe that we're going for, is really just trying to get everybody real pumped, excited. So one of the things we would do is, some of us huddle leaders, is what we were called, would say, hey, I heard salvation costs 50 cents. And someone would say, well, I heard heaven's got a discount on it, that it's, 3 for $1. And people would go back and forth. And then somebody would say, well, I heard that salvation is free. And then we would do a chant about the gospel, and it would get in the kids' minds that, hey, salvation doesn't cost anything. And one day during our devotional, we had a local pastor from Presbyterian Church there in Huntsville that came in. His daughter was an intern with us, and he said, y'all, the most beautiful chant that you sing is that salvation is free. But the one thing that you miss is that discipleship will cost you everything. Yeah. And I think it's so hard for the modern church to understand that both of these things go hand in hand. Because, matter of fact, I had heard it recently in a podcast, and Lord knows, don't quote me on it, because I'd probably get arrested for copyright issues, because I can't remember the name of the podcast. But in there, they were talking, they said, it's so strange that we ask people to believe in Jesus. Hey, believe in this man, he died for your sins. You're a sinner. You're saved by grace now. Oh, by the way, now let me tell you what it means to follow him after you're saved. And that discipleship can even be seen in a salvific manner, that discipling people, whether they're a believer yet or not a believer, can bring them to that position where they know what it means to follow God and know how to follow Christ. And part of that we have to understand is I always love this analogy, is the amount of hours that you spend with the standard influence of the church in comparison to the rest of the world. And to Melissa's point, we see everybody in the office together. It's hard to tie me down in the office, so I'm around a lot of folks, but most of the folks I'm around are either church members or community members that are involved in churches. And so getting out into the mission field is oftentimes difficult for those of us that work in the church or work in nonprofits. But with the kids and the students, our high school students are around 2,200 plus students every single day. Yeah. And it's not far off from that with our elementary school kids. It's just broken up across different schools. And so what does that mean for us with discipleship? It means that we have to understand that there is value in teaching them how to do discipleship at home, because they're going to spend, if a person or student, whoever, comes to our church for everything that we offer, all right, everything that we offer across the board, point blank, you're talking about a Sunday night for tops 2 hours, Sunday morning, if they come to a Sunday morning service and Sunday school, and let's say they go to the third service, or a second service rather, that's 3. So you're talking 5 hours on a Sunday. You're talking an hour and a half on a Wednesday. That's 6.5 hours. And then if they come to CR, then you're talking about 2 hours there. So you're talking less than 10 hours a week that an individual is at the church every time the door is open. Okay. Barna Research and Lifeway both give evidence that an average church member attends church one Sunday a month, one worship service a month, 1 hour a month. So the way above average, even beyond what a lot of our staff do, is almost 10 hours a week. A student who does not participate in a single extracurricular activity from kindergarten to 12th grade spends 40 hours a week at school. In the average attendance of a person in the life of the church is one Sunday a month, 1 hour a month. There is no possible way that a worship service, even if I preached for 45 minutes.
Which you can do, by the way.
I can do that. I can do that. That's 5 pages of a manuscript. What I learned in school is 45 minutes. But when you think about 1 hour compared to the 40 hours that a student spends in school, or 40 hours you spend at work. And let's be honest, most everybody works above 40 hours. And if you have a student in your life, kid, student, whatever, who has extracurricular activities, you can bump that up to close to 70 hours a week that they're spending at school, extracurriculars, and homework before they ever take a moment to sit down and read the Bible. So if your only reliance of discipleship is what Amy and Melissa and I do on a weekly basis, that is not adequate discipleship influence in your family's life in comparison to the world. So right off the bat, you can see why discipleship matters. which this leads us into the second part of why we're doing this and what we're talking about on Wednesday nights, is how can we make disciples of family units and do family discipleship? Because that's of great, great value, because what it does is it puts the tools in your hands. Because we know, hey, travel ball is important. I get it. Sometimes you have school practices that you can't help, right? Sometimes you got coaches who understand that church is on Wednesdays. Sometimes you got coaches who schedule games on Wednesdays. Sometimes you've got film study on Wednesdays. Sometimes you've got different conferences that you have to go to with your kids, or sometimes you have to work and your boss or supervisor doesn't understand that, hey, Sunday morning is a holy time for me. They say, well, it's a holy time for us too. You got to make the company money. We understand there are things that come up. So how can we equip you to make disciples at home? And how can we equip you to disciple families in our church? Even if they don't belong to you by blood, they belong to you in spirit. We strive together for the advancement of the gospel. So how do we do that? So Amy and Melissa, what is family discipleship? Tell me about family discipleship.
Family discipleship is taking this concept of training up for following Jesus and doing it within the home throughout the week. So as Pastor Matt just said, there is more time being spent in the home than in the church, and or doing other things together as a family, such as riding in the car together, or eating out at dinner together for a quick meal between games, and things like that are happening outside of the church building. And so family discipleship is a strategy and a tool and actually an intentionality behind helping one another as a family unit become followers of Jesus, who actually do what Jesus did. And it costs something, like Pastor Matt just said. Like, there is a cost to discipleship. I think there's a book that says that, right? By Bonhoeffer?
It's Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He says, when Christ calls a man, he bids him to come and die.
Mm-hmm. And there's a whole book and resource on the cost of discipleship. And because it takes effort, it takes intentionality for yourself and your children and your grandchildren. And the concept behind family discipleship is helping parents and grandparents, aunts and uncles, and even single people in the church help others and disciple other people. So it's not just about self-discipleship. It's about discipling the spiritual family, discipling in the physical family, and what that looks like, and being intentional in our work, being intentional in our school, being intentional in our sports or other extracurricular activities, in how we follow Jesus and what that looks like in the rhythms of our daily lives.
That's good. Excellent, excellent, excellent. So, Melissa, tell me, family discipleship, kid men, you're talking about kids who sometimes they don't know how to tie their shoes. Sometimes they're like Xander, who, listen, I've never had harder questions about theology than Xander. I mean, he's like, where exactly in the universe is heaven?
Yes. And when's God's birthday?
Yeah, or what's the temperature of hell?
Yes.
I mean, crazy questions, right? So how do you see family discipleship and its value in kid men?
Let's see. Well, for the kids, we do have to start it at home. When we didn't have a really good children's program a few years ago, our kids miss so much. They don't have the foundation, biblical foundation. They don't understand basic Bible stories, things like that. But also, how Amy said, intentional. I tell my kids things, hey, you need to go talk to your parent about this story we talked about today. Hey, go talk to them about this. I just figured out on Gospel Project, we have a link we can start posting on Facebook that parents can watch the video we've watched. It gives them questions to talk about. The kids do a sheet at night on Sunday night that they take home, that they can talk about to their family and things. If we don't start in the home with the kids, the little ones, like John Graham, if we don't start with him, teaching him the Bible and how to behave and things like that, how are we going to expect him as a teenager to stay in church?
Listen, I tell you what.
We have to be intentional in this.
And I think that both of you hit that word, intentional, and it is so valuable when we think about family discipleship. It's intentional living within the family, because there are things that we just learn. For me, growing up as a young man, my dad never gave me an agenda to say, "Hey, on Saturday we're going to learn the following skills." It was Saturday morning. We woke up and he said, "Come on, Junior," and I'm like, "Where are we going?" So we're going to get some brake pads. For what? Well, your mama needs new disc on her brakes, and so we're going to put new pads on. Or he'd say, hey, Junior, come out here. You know, I'm like, well, I already did my push mowing. He said, yeah, but the belt's off the mower. I need to show you how to change it. And would show me how to do those things. And my grandfather, one day, we were purchasing a medical bracelet for my mom. She had just been diagnosed with diabetes, and we went to the jewelry store. And I was 7 years old, and I remember standing in front of Greer's Jewelers in Gadsden, and he taught me how to shake a man's hand. He said, "You going in and doing all the talking, all the business." Those weren't things we just set agendas for, and those are things that every person that's listening to our podcast can make a connection to milestones and make a connection to. Well, of course, that's how you teach your children to be men or to be women or to do whatever you need to do to teach them those life skills. But when we think about Christianity and theology and just the overall framework of discipleship, I think people feel so inadequate to do it that it's hard for them.
I think, too, we need to point out that when we say family, like I have several kids that come on Sundays or Wednesday nights that their parents don't go to our church. But I've told the kids they're still welcome to come to the Homegrown Faith because we are a church family. Even though their parents may not come, they are still our family, and we need to be ministering to them. Yeah. So when we say family, it doesn't just mean your mom and dad and relatives. Yeah. It doesn't matter if your kids are not in KidMin anymore or not in students. You still need to come to this and learn with us.
Yeah, so what Melissa's talking about is we're doing intentionally a study on Wednesdays, 5:30 p.m. to 6:15 p.m. This past Wednesday was our first one on homegrown faith and going through our family discipleship guide, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. But our family discipleship guide is something that lays out for us what this structure is, the framework, how to do it. And the way that it can be intentional when you do this in your life is the intentionality of living with every purpose every time you encounter a situation with your children. Hey, how did you see Jesus present in this? Or who is Jesus to you? Like John Graham, he sings "Jesus Loves Me" in the car every time we get home from church, or he'll go around the fellowship hall on Wednesday night. So most of the time, Mary Evelyn tries to take the boys home to keep them in a good rhythm, but on the other nights, he'll be there, and he'll just be walking around the tables or running, more than likely, you know, and the wise man, definitely running, yeah. Running. You know, the wise man built his house upon the rock, and he wants to listen to it all the time. Yes. He's getting in the habit of those stories. He may not have a clue what we're doing, but he gets in the habit of those things. I've taught him how to put air in a tire. Yeah, this past weekend, we learned how to patch a tire. We had to patch a tire on the golf cart, and he just loved every minute of it. Do I expect John Graham to be able to go out and plug a tire? No, but he knows the rhythms to it. It's the same with our faith. We just bring our children into our circle and teach them those rhythms with intentionality, whether that's our bloodline children, whether that's the mother or father that you see on the other side of the congregation that you're like, you know, they don't look like they're getting a lot of sleep. They need some help. And you step in and help them. Or perhaps that you know that there's a family in the church who has a lot of kids, and you're just like, hey, let me just want to take you to lunch. You know, just let me just check on you and find a way to be intentional about those spiritual methods of discipleship, because that's the way that we grow and the way we grow in our faith. And one of the things that we have put together, I say we, Amy and Melissa have put this together, and Amy did this for her doctorate project, and Amy's awesome. In case you didn't know that, yes. Amy's a Swiss Army knife. You've seen the website. She fixed the website. If you've seen posts on social media, more than likely it's Amy. Especially if you see a graphic that looked one way on Monday and a different way on Tuesday. Yeah. It's normally because Amy's taken my graphic and said, Matt, this is trash.
Amy fixed it.
Gone and fixed it and put it back.
I don't use those words.
No, you don't. You know.
She just fixes it.
She just fixes it. And that says enough.
I did it.
Yeah. You know, or I'll send a graphic in the group text, and Amy will say, Matt, don't post that yet. And I say, okay, all right, cool. You know, we're gonna wait, like strategize. And then she'll send it to me. I'm like, what did you do? I'm like, I know how Canva works too, but it never looks like this. But anyway, she's put together this family discipleship guide and has kept me in the loop every single step of the way on this. This was actually a framework, to be honest with you. When we hired Amy over a year ago. She presented this not in such pretty framework and picture, but when we were asking her, hey, what is family discipleship? Because that's her job title, Director of Family Ministries. What does that mean? What does it look like? And so her and Melissa sat down, looked at how to put this together, then present it to our families and myself as well. And so I'm going to let Amy and Melissa tell a little more about this, where you can find it, and those sorts of things.
So this is available at the kids ministry table in hard copy in the fellowship hall, but it's also on our website. So if you go to our website and you start looking through all the tabs, a digital copy of this is available on our website. But like Pastor Matt said, this
Under
is
resources.
Also on the Lent.
it's also
The
in the
season
Lent
of
book.
Lent book.
Yeah,
It's in that.
Yeah, it's in the Lent Guide to the Season. And this is a culmination of my doctorate project that I did a couple of years ago. And what it basically is a framework for churches. Any church could use this and adapt it to their own congregation. And that's what Melissa and I did. We sat down together and discussed some different things that need to be included, discussed some things that maybe we should change for First Methodist, because when I originally put it together, it was for a different local church. So this gives the church something like a guide to go by, and also families to go by. And something we're going to talk about next week are milestones. So something that's included in this that we need to point out for this episode is the faith journey. So the whole reason why we need a family discipleship process is because at some point, the teenagers in our congregation are going to start taking ownership of their faith. And so what can we do in the life of a child? What can we do in the life of older teens to partner with them as they're taking greater and more ownership of their faith? Because there's a point in the middle of this X right here that teenagers are going to start owning their own faith, and they're going to have the parents are going to have less, not none, but less influence over the spiritual decisions of their children. So we have this discipleship process for families in place to say, okay, what are some of the key moments, key events, and milestones in my child's life that hopefully if we intentionally instill these biblical concepts and foundations, that when they start to take more ownership of their faith, they do this on their own rather than leaning so heavily on the parents to guide them in that. So the part of the family discipleship process guide helps families to know what milestones, and helps the church family to know, how do we partner with family units? How do we partner with parents in this? And a big deal, there's a book called Why They Stay, is the involvement of adults in the spiritual life of kids and teens that are not their parents. So there's a huge role that the church family plays in the spiritual development of kids and teens, and something like this in the hands of every church member, not just parents, but every church member, helps the church member to partner alongside family units and be an influence, a spiritual influence in the lives of kids and teens. So I encourage you over the next several weeks, as we dive into what this guide is, to come on Wednesdays. Like Pastor Matt has already said, we had one this past week, went great. So come on Wednesday nights to talk about homegrown faith, because we are going to break this down every single week and talk more and more about what this looks like for you as a church member. And if you're not a part of First Methodist and you want to be a part of a church that has a family discipleship strategy and process, come. We would love to have you, because for the faith to be passed down from generation to generation, it's going to take a strategy in today's busy world, and it's going to take some intentionality on behalf of every church member, not just families. So yeah, this is a culmination of that doctorate project, and I'm excited to work together with Pastor Matt and Melissa in implementing this here at First Methodist, and how it's going to help our family units as well as our church family.
I wish I had a graduation applause button here on my pads, but I don't have that. But I'll say a couple of things to this. One, Proverbs 29 verse 18 says, "Where there is no vision, the people perish, but happy is he who keeps the law." And so when we think of a way that we can provide vision, there's a lot to that of leadership, of what happens when someone joins the church. How do you join the church? How someone grows in their biblical knowledge. You'll notice all around the church there's signs that say know, grow, go, and we've got all that listed as to what it means to do that, to transform the world with the good news of Jesus. But sometimes it's good when we talk about discipleship. How do we do that? What's the framework for how we do those things and why that's of great value? And the second thing I want to say to this is there's a phenomenal book called Growing Young by Fuller Youth Institute. and they do a lot of research-based writing. And so it's kind of funny. There's a guy, his name is Steve.
2,000 years later.
Oh, wow. Just not enough coffee. Anyways, his last name escapes me. His first name, Steve, works for Youth Institute. Steve Argue. And just like you argue with your wife, Steve Argue. And I had gone to a conference, and I was going to this guy's lecture for the conference, and I was sitting down, drinking my coffee, waiting for it to start, and this man with some long hair, looked like he came from California, sat down beside me, and he got to talking to me and asked me my context of ministry and things. And I said, well, who are you? He said, I'm Steve Argue. And I said, oh, great. Well, I've got a lot of questions. And so we just sat there and talked and talked and talked, and I really just dove in deep to everything that he said. One story in there that just really impacted me. It's a phenomenal resource that I think every person of the church should read. But what they do is they do research, and then they write a book about the research. So they don't say, hey, let's think about how we can help churches grow young. What they do is they say, how many churches have a healthy young adult ministry and young adult presence in the church? So they go out and survey, and they look at all these churches, and then they gather research, and then they write about what they have found. So it's really neat the way they do it. But they said in the story, they said he went out to one church, and it was a predominantly traditional church, but they were full of young adults. And he said, what are y'all doing? He said, man, you got to meet Joe. I may have the name wrong, but anyways, it was a gentleman in the church, and Steve and his team got there and said, we want to meet Joe. And they were expecting some hip dude, like a state of the art college pastor with all the skinny jeans, all the things. No, it was an old man who I'm pretty sure was a retired vet, Army veteran, and was just like old and ornery, typical. I don't want to say typical old person in church, but he was an old person in the life of the church, and they were just kind of shocked, like, Joe's the reason that you're a young adult at the church. And they said, Joe talks to us like a man. Joe cares for us. It amazed us. We were out at the community college baseball game, and Joe showed up. He was there watching us. Joe would help us with our finances. Joe would just speak life into our lives. And Joe didn't have kids of his own or that lived there. And he just connected with the people, just lived in their life, put himself in their life consistently, intentionally, and through that process of living life together, making disciples, it was that easy. He didn't have any hip trends, didn't do anything. They just loved Joe because Joe loved them. And that is what is at the heart of family discipleship, is when we look across a family, if you love your children, if you love your church's children, if you love the families of our church, if you have a family member in our church, or you have kids, grandkids, and whatever in the life of the church, then this family discipleship guide is a tool for you to increase the faith development of those in our congregation. So we got just a couple minutes before we close. Melissa, I want to hear from you. Family discipleship guide. What about this is most special to you or most impactful? Don't spoil next week, but just tell us.
Amy did this, not me. I just gave her some points.
What's the part you like the most?
Not spoiling next week. The milestones, I think, is amazing because it tells exactly from preschool to young adults, things we do at church and that. But I think the big thing is the whole family discipleship guide also shows you how biblically sound we are. And it has our mission statement and the whole know, grow, go. And this, where it's Christ-centered, word-grounded, faith-driven. So reading this, that we are a biblically sound church and ministry to our children and students and families.
Good. Milestones is topic for next week. How that looks in our church, how you can achieve that and those things. But it's gonna be pretty cool. So all right, anybody else got anything before we close? Anything you want to say to the people?
No, thank you for watching.
Yeah, good. Melissa?
No, I'm good.
Nothing. All right. Hey,
We're just glad she's here.
Thank y'all.
Made it through.
That's it. Hey, thank y'all so much. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to share. Know, grow, go. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you soon.